Well, welcome, everybody, to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the Flight Deck, and got a good one today. We got some Smart Talk Radio in our future. We're going to be talking to Jayne Jones. Who is Jayne Jones? Well, she is the member. She's the better half of a duo, Jayne Jones and Alicia Long. They are co-authors of a book called Capitol Hell, talking about and reviewing their exploits on Capitol Hill. They began their political careers working for former Senator Norman Coleman of Minnesota as staffers in both his St. Paul, Minneapolis office as well as his Washington, D.C. office. Later, Jayne went back to Minnesota and worked for the Minnesota House of Representatives. She was the executive assistant to the Speaker of the House, Steve Figman. And they have put together an interesting retrospective on life on Capitol Hill, like we said earlier, called Capitol Hell. Jayne, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic, thank you.
Good. Life is kind of a whirlwind, probably has been for several years, but in particular lately. I understand you've been wed recently, and now you've got a book that's hot on the market. Yeah.
I got tied the knot and released our book in September and having an absolute blast. Alicia and I have been going coast to coast with the book. We were just in L.A. this week taping for the Jeff Probst show. So we're having an absolute fun time with the book, and we're having fun that people are reading it besides mom and dad, and they're laughing out loud.
Yeah, besides mom and dad, your biggest cheerleaders, I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
Jayne, let's do this. Give our Lewis at Large listeners here a little bit of background. What intrigued you so much at an early age about politics, and what was your first job, and how'd you get into it?
Yeah, I think back in the day, my parents used to always sit and have dinner together, and at the dinner table we always talked about politics. So I think politics was ingrained in me. Public service was also, I think, in the genetics. My grandpa was the head of the Republican Party in Minnesota, and my dad actually served on our school board and every single board you could possibly imagine growing up. So I think that was in my belly, that you're supposed to go and do public service. So after graduating from law school, I decided there weren't enough lawyers in D.C. I thought I'd throw my hat in D.C. and I worked on a campaign, picked the right horse in the campaign, and went to Washington, D.C. to serve with Senator Coleman.
I'm curious, that must have been exciting, and I'm sure you were really looking forward to it. It must have been a little bit intimidating, too, wasn't it, at first?
Oh, I wish I was intimidated. I was naive, though. I mean, I came in I kind of had the thinking in my head that everybody had the same startup that I had. Everybody was there to worked like a dog, they were there working on behalf of their state, and because they really were passionate about the person that they helped get elected. But that's not true. There's half the Congressional Hill staffers are kind of like the former me. The other half are more worried about their own resume, and they're trying to move up the ladder, and they're willing to do anything and everything to get to that next position or that next office.
That's an interesting question and a subject you bring up. You're talking about support staff for those that are already elected. From where you sit and you look back on it, the people that you knew that were executive assistants and staffers, were they trying to move up the political ladder in terms of administration, or were they trying to jockey themselves and get ready to run themselves for public office?
Oh, gosh, I don't think any of them, I don't think too many staffers run for office. I think a lot of them try to move up to another office, to a committee staff. Also, for the big L word, becoming a lobbyist. That's where the mucho dollars come in.
You bet.
I think everybody's still too young to run for office. I think everybody on the Hill, believe it or not, you're 22 to 23 years old, fresh out of law school or fresh to your MBA. They know they have to go and build up experience before you run for office. So I don't think people are not worried too much about running for office unless they're going back to run for, the state legislature or becoming the mayor.
I read a quote the other day, Jayne, by Kurt Vonnegut, the author, that said what scared him the most was that one day members of his high school class would be running the country. Is that kind of the same thing?
I think there's a lot of, Detroit Lakes, Minnesota has quite a few superstars, so let them run the country.
Let's talk, let's dive down now again. So here you are, you're younger, you're not fresh out of law school, but close, and you're beginning a career. You land with your friend in Washington, D.C. What was one of the first things that maybe didn't change your view, but surprised you right out of the box?
Oh, gosh. I think, what folks would be really surprised by is the hours. I think that you kind of don't expect that, your congressional, I came from Midwest. Our day in the Midwest ends at 5 o'clock, kind of, right? You go home and you have dinner and you go to high school sports games and you watch TV and you do things as a family. But in D.C., the day doesn't end until like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and then you go home and you sleep with 2 BlackBerries by your pillow in case your boss is texting or emailing you, or other staffers are asking questions. You have to answer that question, no matter if it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think I knew that was going to be kind of the pressure cooker of you work, you're fanny off. I'm not quite sure folks would know that, because you always think of senators are always back home, they're never getting anything done, like no legislation ever gets passed. But those staffers, boy, they're burning the midnight oil.
Right. What I'm curious is, as you looked around, sort of your class of staffers, the people that arrived in D.C. about the same time you did, what percentage ultimately said, wow, this is way too much, I actually don't like this, I'm going to drop out?
Yeah, I don't know what percentage is, but I do know this, that the usual staffer only lasts 14 months in a certain position in a certain office. So Alicia and I were really rare because we lasted 5 and 6 years. So we stuck it out the entire time. But you know what? The turnover is amazing. So every 14 months, that's gone. That's pretty.
Yeah,
that's a pretty fast turnover.
Indeed,
you kind of start to get your feet wet, and all of a sudden they up and leave.
Their political shows have always dotted the television landscape, but recently West Wing, Veep on HBO. How Veep is all about staffers. I mean, it really, if you look at it,
yeah.
How close is that on the mark?
I think Veep is funny. I think Veep really focuses obviously on the presidential administration, so on that in the executive branch. I think shows like Parks and Rec, remember Spin City by Michael J. Fox? I think that's a little bit more realistic. Capitol Hill, the TV series, would be a little bit more realistic as to actually what life really is like.
Right.
Behind that Senate office curtain.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. And again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck here of Lewis at Large Radio. This segment got a good one going here. Talking to Jayne Jones, former Capitol Hill staffer herself. She's also the co-author of an interesting retrospective called Capitol Hell, about their lives working for the federal government. Hey, Jayne, talk to us a little bit about Capitol Hell, and you mentioned TV series. Tell us, you've written the book, but is it a made-for-TV movie? Is it a TV series, or is it ready for the big screen?
Oh, my gosh, I like how you think. Knock on wood. Would love to. Alicia and I love to be walking that red carpet wearing pink dresses.
Hey, by the way, before we get too deep, who would play you in the movie?
Oh, my gosh, you're starting to get that question so much. I have absolutely no idea, but she better be cute, and she better be funny.
Okay. All right. Well, again, when you put this together, I'm curious, when you do collaborations like this, and they usually happen over a glass of wine or over a beer or maybe on an airplane flight together, and you get excited and you ramp up, did it concern you that putting together a book like this would therefore inherently you'd end up sort of stinging some of your former workmates and maybe even some of your former friends?
Well, you know what? Here's the deal. Warren, this book is fiction, so there's no personalities or no certain persons that a character is based off or not. We really have tapped into what folks are calling Congressional Hill stock characters. So you know what we've created characters that have maybe traits of certain personalities and certain situations that happen, but really the book is fictional because we're putting all different crazy stories into this fictional Senate office. And the other thing, we didn't really collaborate either between over a beer. This is what's fascinating about this. Alicia and I, best friends, we're almost like sisters to each other. We've been best friends for 10 years. We talk every single day, but we never once talked about the book. Believe it or not, it took us 4 years to write it. Alicia, the first time we wrote chapter 1, Alicia was sitting on my couch. We agreed that we're going to start writing a book. That's kind of like, those random things. Let's write a song. Let's write a book. So she wrote chapter 1. She sent it to me by email. I jazzed it up, added a little sparkle and dazzle to it. I sent her chapter 2 back, and then she sent me chapter 3. We piggybacked that way the entire time over 4 years, but we never once had a conversation about where the book was going. We had no notes, no outline. So I'd get the chapter, and I'd be surprised that, Karma the senator's wife is off to Iraq to go shopping, because that's where you go shopping now. Like, come on, crazy thing.
So at what point did you know, after these various volleys that you sent back and forth to one another, did someone finally just write the last chapter?
Oh, gosh. You know what? We figured out it was actually about a year ago, believe it or not. We finished the manuscript in April of last year. And I think probably around maybe the year before that, we decided, if we're really going to do this, if we're really going to jump off the diving board and, publish this manuscript that we've been cranking out for the last 3 years at that point, then you know what? We're going to do it. We're going to do it right. So I think about a year ago, we kind of, said, you know what? Let's jump off the diving board. We got something here. This is funny. People like it. Cause we kind of kept it pretty close to our chest at the time. I shared it with my parents. I shared it with my now husband and said, take a look at this. What do you think? Are we just crazy and think this is fun and funny to read, or think other people are going to like it too? And people who don't like politics are eat it up.
Well, this begs the question. Again, you were inside the Beltway, inside Capitol Hill. Tell us, again, whether it's a juicy story or not, but without naming names, if you wish, is it reasonable to assume that there's a fair amount of what would be considered questionable behavior that goes on, whether it's among staffers, or among elected officials?
Well, you used the right word. People are calling Capitol Hill a juicy and saucy novel. Here's one thing that's fun about it, though. No one everybody's like, there's so much sex in this book. And we're like, Alicia and I kind of look at each other like, wait a second, you're in the same thing we wrote? Because nobody in our book has sex. There's no time to have sex. Everybody's working so hard. There's no time to have relationships or have sex or even do anything like that. So, I think there's actually, I'm going to say there's quite a few circumstances of shenanigans that, folks would raise an eyebrow to, I think, and say, I can't believe this is actually what happened. I can't believe that, these situations go down. It's not just one office it all happened in. Again, we took stories from all these different Congressional Hill staffers and put them all into a fictional tale. So, pulling of everything together is making this office wouldn't survive on the Hill. There's no way.
Right. Okay. Well, and again, I know that there's a lighthearted tone to the book, and while it may be sort of expose, so to speak, I know it's written probably with a lot of love and fondness, really, for your years there. But I'm curious, would we be surprised, the truth be told, at either extramarital activity, drug use, all that kind of what would be considered sort of unseemly behavior?
I think the extramarital stuff you'd be kind of surprised at. I'm not quite sure. D.C. is not really a drug city in my eyes.
It doesn't seem that way.
My naive, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. If you read the book, Janet's pretty a naive character, so she never smoked anything before in her life. So I don't think that I never saw the drug situation. I don't think D.C. is a drug city. I would say the extramarital. I think, let's face it, I think lobbyists, politicians, even staffers they're not afraid to.
Yep,
that jump.
A lot of people in power, for sure. A lot of power going on there.
Disgusting, right? Disgusting.
Yeah, and maybe the drug use thing is maybe because everybody's working so much, you just got to be on your game or you're gone. Right? It might be there. I just never. I can't speak about that. Well, what about?
I can't really speak about the fair situation. I have no knowledge.
Remember, you're newly married, right?
Right, newly married. My gosh.
All right. Again, we're
talking about affairs.
Yeah, we're with Jayne. We're with Jayne Jones, co-author of Capitol Hill. She wrote it with her personal friend and also sort of professional cohort as well, Alicia Long. And tell us now, you and Alicia do not work together, but you're still obviously in constant touch.
Oh my gosh, Alicia and I, we share a brain. We're like neither one of us has a sister, and I think we've become sisters in each other's lives. And there's nobody I could write a book with besides her. She can finish my sentence. If she was on the other line right now, you'd have people talking at the exact same time with both high energy. So, but she's fantastic. She just got she's now an attorney with the Department of Justice. So she's out fighting the tough crime and she wants to prosecute folks.
So she wants to come after those people that are messing around on Capitol Hill.
She probably does. And trust me, she won't be afraid to do it. But if you saw her picture, you'd be surprised. And Alicia's 5'11", not afraid to wear really high heels.
Yeah. Well, Jayne, here's another thing. Just overall, the book I know is a fun sort of saucy novel, so to speak, but it is in fact grounded in many ways on fact. As you look back on your career there, did it make you feel better, worse, or indifferent about what's going on inside the Beltway?
Oh, you know what? I think here's the deal. I felt here's a true story. So every time now I go to D.C., what's the very first thing that happens to me when I land in D.C. and start driving in on the Beltway? I get an instant stomach ache. So I think that kind of says it all. That instant stomach ache has never left me. It's just that instant belly ache of remembering what it was really like. You kept hearing every time you worked in the Hills, especially from my mom and dad and all their friends, you have such a cool job, such a great opportunity. Yes, it was an excellent opportunity, it was also one that pretty much opened my eyes. And, it's a pressure cooker. There's no way. Right now I'm more concerned about my 14-year-old stepdaughter's volleyball schedule, and I could care two cahoots about the senator's schedule. So I think that kind of says there's been a reashifting of priorities and interests, and I think my life is so much better now. Not to say that someday I wouldn't like the ring of Senator Jones, and I hope that that situation of our Senator Long, Senator Jones, if that ever happened, that, I think we could put together a pretty bang-up office and show America this is what it's supposed. How it's supposed to be.
How it's supposed to be. What? And again, that kind of begs the question again. Right now, you've got some realigned priorities, obviously, with the family and all that. But at some point in time, what would you like to go back?
I'm not quite sure if I'm more interested in state policy versus federal policy. Part of me always, says, what? I know I could do a better job. I know I could do this. I know I'm a worker bee. I know I could I'm a take a problem and find a solution. And right now they're finding absolutely no solutions on the Hill. And, I already have, 5 pieces of legislation under my belt that I've written, word by word, and have seen the president or governor sign. So I think I do have a little bit of that in me that says, you know what? I want to go and represent these folks. So maybe, knock on wood, if I ever happen to run and get elected, that I would have that opportunity. I'm not quite sure right now, though, if it's the state or the federal side I'd be more interested in.
Well, the work, as we call it, is called Capitol Hell. It is written lovingly, undoubtedly, by Jayne Jones and Alicia Long. They spent several years on Capitol Hill, also in the state legislature, now off leading their own lives, but out running around the country telling the people about the work. Jayne, how can our Lewis at Large listeners get a copy of the book and maybe find out a little bit more about both of you?
Yeah, we have a fantastic website, CapitolHellBook.com. On there, you can order the book. We'll actually sign it, personalize it, send it back to you. And you can find out, more about our story. You can see all our media interviews. You can also find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your favorite bookstore. Capitol Hell, and it's capital with the O-L. That's the tricky part.
Yep, the other one's the money part, isn't it? Well, okay, let's, last question here before we wrap up, and that is this. What's in the cards for you? Go out the next 2-3 years. What are you going to be doing?
Oh my gosh! I hope we've started Capitol Hell, the book number 2 in the series. So I hope that we end up having that getting published by the end of the year. And then I think right now I'm focused in on. I teach political science at Concordia University in St. Paul. I think I'm focused in on making sure I'm doing a bang up job for my students. And who knows? Right now there's a part of me that is an itch in the stomach still that thinks, what? God gave me good talents and leadership skills, so maybe I should throw my hat in the ring and run for office. So, what? Maybe that's 3 years out. God willing, let's do it.
Wow. Okay. Well, you heard it here first, Jayne Jones. Do you solemnly?
Send in the money, right? Send in the dollars in.
Do you solemnly swear?
Yes.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you so much for being our guest on this segment, and best of luck. And it sounds like you're having a blast. Good luck with the book. Good luck with the marriage, and would love to talk to you again in the future.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Thanks so much.
You
Have
bet.
a great day, everybody.
We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.